Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we're going to be talking in depth about the new, or the existing now I guess, cloud shared licensing system that CTC offers. Now, as always, we do watch the questions window, and so if you have questions while we're talking about some of these topics, we encourage you to throw them into the questions window and we try to answer them live. We also, of course, save a large Q&A session for the end, so be sure to hang out for that if you want to get additional questions answered there. And also, as always, we record these sessions. So this will be going up to our YouTube channel most likely tomorrow, right around the same time. So with that, let's jump in and start talking about today's topic. So the Cloud Shared Licensing, or CSL, portion of CTC's website, really the whole point of this is to make your life easier as admins to get licenses in the hands of all of your users. It doesn't really matter if they're attached to your corporate network or not, as long as they're signed in with the proper credentials, no matter where they are in the world, they can get access to CTC's licensing. And this is fantastic. But the thing is, though, that you need to be a little bit aware of how to manage this, right? You want to make sure that the correct people are getting the correct licenses when they need those licenses. And so we're going to talk about that today, how this actually is administered, take you through the administration UI. And of course, again, because this is recorded, you can always come back and review this in the future when you're trying to admin your licenses in the cloud shared environment yourself. So we're going to go over a couple of very specific things today. I want to talk about what cloud shared licensing is so we can define that very specifically. I want to help you navigate through the CTC licensing portal. And if you currently today are an organization admin or a licensing admin, you can actually follow along and do these exact same steps. We are going to talk a little bit about the legacy and licensing controls in the software itself, in CTC's tools for the SIM and BIM project manager and batch suites. And we're also going to take a look in the licensing portal about creating user groups, users themselves, and allocating them cloud shared licensing so that you can understand exactly how that licensing is assigned. And we're also going to take a quick look at revoking licenses from users in case you wanted to pull a license while it was in use. This is one of the beauties of this online system. You don't have to wait for an IT manager to take action on your behalf. You can yourself jump in and take that action. So we'll be taking a look at how that works. And I have a bonus at the very end. I want to talk a little bit about reporting and how you can actually see how your licenses are being used. We'll take a look at that today as well, kind of as a subtopic at the very end, just before we jump into Q&A. So first, let's talk about what is CTC's Cloud Shared Licensing. So what is this? So CSL, you'll hear us talk about CSL a lot. CSL is Cloud Shared Licensing. That's what it stands for. And really what this enables is your management of your licenses from the cloud. So you don't have to install infrastructure on your local network. Users don't have to VPN into the main office if they're working remotely. It just administers directly through a cloud portal. Now, I want to be very clear about something, because when companies start talking about this cloud licensing, usually you immediately think like, man, my licensing costs are going to go through the roof. But here's the deal. Instead of specifically having named users for CTC's main suites, it's not named users. I mean, you have to create an account, but it's a pool of licenses. This is just like our network licensing solution, but you don't have to install the network license manager on your network. And like I said, your users don't have to VPN and retain connection to the office. But it pretty much has all the same functions that the old network license management system has, plus a number more. So it's going to give you quite a few benefits here. The nice thing here is that it's built into the CTC customer portal, our whole website system, where you do a lot of your management of your CTC products. And if you're using our CTC Hive product, you can manage it there. Same exact location, same portal. You can manipulate all of it, which means, you know, if you've got a web-enabled device, your kid's Chromebook, your cell phone, your tablet, doesn't really matter. You can do administration of the licensing right from any of those cloud-enabled or web-enabled devices. And you're probably already familiar with some of these concepts. I mean, Microsoft, Autodesk, Adobe, they're all doing this sort of cloud licensing, though most of them, or all of them, are actually leveraging named users. And this, for the main CTC suites is not named users. It's a pool of licenses that you share. That's why the name is Cloud Shared Licensing, because you're sharing this license amongst a number of your team members. Okay. And here's the important thing. All 2023 plus products, all those that are above 2023's version year, that includes all the point releases, the new 24 that's coming out soon. All of that product is cloud shared licensing or CSL enabled. So if you're using 2023 or newer, you can absolutely take advantage of the cloud shared licensing, and I would encourage you to do that. So let's talk about some of the reasons, just outline them specifically. I've mentioned a few of these already, but I'm going to mention this one here specifically again. Your internal IT infrastructure is greatly simplified. The management, the administration, the updating of annual license files, you don't have to worry about any of that because it's all based on the cloud system. You simply go up there and allocate licenses directly through a web portal, and you can completely skip IT for this particular step, because that's something that they don't need to be worrying about necessarily. The nice thing here also is that it's instant license allocation. You want to give somebody a license, you simply go up to the portal, make sure they have an account, and you can assign them a license or put them in a user group that has licenses. And we're going to go through those steps in just a little bit here. You also get suite and tool usage reporting, and I'll be showing that at the very end. We did a previous webinar on this topic, and we didn't actually show the reporting, but I want to show that this time around so you kind of have an idea of a little bit of what you can pull out of this environment here. And for those of you who might want to be, trying our tools out, maybe you haven't purchased from CTC before and you want to try it out. Well, the old trialing process was a little cumbersome, and if you needed a little bit more time, it was kind of frustrating to have to go through and create a network license system to get an extension to your licenses. And then converting that over to a paid license also had a bit of frustration. And now, the whole goal here is that we want to streamline this. We want to make this as easy as possible. And part of that just includes the modernization of our licensing methodology. So this is why we're implementing cloud shared licensing and why we encourage you to take advantage of it, just to make your life, again, as easy as possible. So let's talk about navigating the licensing portal. So if you have any licensing from CTC or any tools from CTC, an account with us, you probably can go to the CTC portal and sign in. And let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to go to the home page here because I'm actually already in the portal. I'm going to go to the home page, and to the right over here, there's a little person. In my case, I'm already authenticated, so it's solid filled blue. If you were not authenticated yet, you hadn't yet signed in, it would be an outline of that same person. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my little, avatar there, and it's going to bring me here directly to the CTC dashboard. Now, if you have Hive, this will look familiar. If you don't yet have Hive, take a look at it. But if you have other CTC licensing or CTC products, you may very well be able to sign in here as well. So I'm here on the portal, and the area that we're going to be focusing on exclusively today is the licensing and the users and groups. And first off, we're going to go take a look at the licensing portion. Here inside of licensing, you can see a list of all of the products that you have with CTC. In my case, the one that I'll be focusing on most heavily today is the BIM project suite. And as I expand this out right here, I can see that I have 16 licenses. I can see that they are all active. Because I have the ability to manipulate my licensing, this indicates to me that I actually have this as cloud shared licensing. And right now you can see that I have no licenses actively in use. As I open up a tool in a moment here, we'll actually see this refresh, and we will be able to see the licenses that are in use. And this is also where you can do some revocation of licenses if you wanted to pull them back from a user who maybe left it open when they walked away from their desk. You can simply see like, oh, that's so-and-so, and they're in a meeting right now. Let's pull that so somebody else can get access to that license. So that's an easy workflow. And then the other area we're going to focus on inside this portal is the users and groups portion. This is where you identify who can actually authenticate to your company and get access to your licensing. I like throwing people into user groups, and I leverage these user groups for the active allocation of licenses to groups of people. And that makes it so I don't have to micromanage person by person. I can just throw them into a group and they get whatever licenses those groups get. We'll talk about some really easy ways of administering this here in just a little bit. So in fact, that's actually my next topic here is some licensing controls. Let's take a look at the actual allocation of licensing in the portal here. So back on the licensing tab itself, we'll go back to the users and groups and talk a bit about the administration of that. But here in the licensing tab, if I expand out that BIM project suite again, to the right of this, when you're looking at a particular license, you'll have the ability to assign licenses, these licenses for this particular tool, to people or groups of people. And the default here is groups of people. You can do individual users here at the top if you really want to, where I can assign it to specific individuals. But generally speaking, most companies find the best benefit by going through groups, and it just kind of streamlines the whole process. In my group here, you can see that I've assigned this license to everyone at CTC, and we're going to talk about this particular special group here in a moment because it really streamlines your implementation of this. And so basically, you just go to your select groups little drop down here. You can search for groups if you have too many to fill a single page. So like I have BIM managers in my group, and I can choose to add the BIM managers to this license as well, though I don't need to in this case because, well, everybody at CTC has access to this license. There's no need to micromanage that. So where would I perhaps not use the BIM manager level or the everyone license? And that's actually in my BIM manager suite right here. This particular suite, when I go to assign licenses, you'll notice that I have my R, CAD, and BIM manager group associated right here, and any of my BIM managers are allowed to leverage the licensing of the BIM manager suite. So you'll notice I did not add everyone here. To do this, though, I had to create myself a custom group that was dedicated to my CAD and BIM managers, and I specifically put people in there. And when you do this kind of a group, you're probably, if you are using Hive, you probably already have a number of user groups, and you can leverage those directly because you're probably using those for your library rights allocation up here as well, or your projects allocation, or potentially some of the other site controls you have if you're familiar with CTC's kind of customer portal at all. But these groups right here, we're going to go take a look next at how you do some administration of those users and those groups. So you can see some of the streamlined workflows of how you can get a bunch of users created and how you can build the groups themselves. Because the last thing I want you as BIM managers and CAD managers doing is sitting in this interface and one by one adding users over and over when there's hundreds of users potentially at your firm to add. So I'm going to jump back over to the Users and Groups tab. We're going to take a look at adding a single user. So for those of you who are like 10 users or less, it's really easy just to go into the little plus sign right here. You add a first name, last name, an email address. You give them a default password. Recommend that they change that. And then you ultimately here create that user. So once you generate that user, let me just go into one here. I'm going to use a default like CMS admin fake user that I have here at the company. Once I have that user generated, you can jump back into the select roles and members. And if they need to have explicit roles, you can certainly assign that if you really want to. If you don't want them to have explicit roles, but rather you want to assign those roles via groups, which is what I personally recommend, you can associate those users directly with any groups you already have. Everybody will automatically default to being in that everyone group. Let's go find out why that is. So if I jump into groups now, and some people start with groups and they make a couple of user groups first and then they go make their users. So when they're making their users, they have groups already to assign them to when you're doing that one by one. You'll see I have quite a few groups inside of here, way more than I really need. I build this out so I can talk about different examples of how you might set up your organization, specifically as it relates to the CTC Hive product. But the only two groups you really need for the purpose of licensing, at least in my opinion, is the everyone group, which you'll notice here actually is branded as default. Notice how there's no checkbox in front of the pencil right there? That's because you can't actually get rid of this group. This will exist, and it starts out in your firm being called everyone, just everyone. I've renamed it to prefix it with R, and to suffix it with CTCE because I like having my groups branded in a very specific way. So all of my roles-based groups I prefix with R-, or my discipline-specific groups I prefix here, as you can see, with DI-. And that just helps them sort better in the browser, helps me search for them faster because I know generally what my groups are. So naming conventions are important. And you can rename this group if you want to, this everyone group. You simply go hit the little pencil, you can change the name. The select roles and members is kind of really irrelevant because all of your members of your organization will automatically be here. And I most likely would not assign any organization level roles here to give them any kind of administration controls. You can if you want to. I typically wouldn't. That's up to you. The next group, though, that I'm going to talk about is called the CAD BIM Manager group here. I made this one custom, and I'm going to go through the creation of a group here with you right now. Little plus sign up at the top right corner, just like for the users. You can add new users or groups this way. I'm going to create a new group. I'm not going to prefix this so I know to delete it later. I'm just going to call this managers. So just managers. I'm going to create that group. That's going to create a group definition called managers. It's going to jump me right back into the edit group role. And if I wanted to give them any kind of admin level controls, I could certainly do that. For example, if I wanted these CAD BIM managers to be able to do license allocation like I'm doing right now, I can give them that role. If I want them to be able to do user administration like I'm doing right now, I can give them that role as well. There's other things you can assign. You want to be careful about these roles because if you choose, for example, organization admin, this is God level across the entire system. This also means that this team of people could, initiate purchases. And you might not want that, right? Because we have a special role for purchasing admins that allows you to assign like who can actually do purchasing at your firm. So you can assign whatever level roles here make sense for these team members, and then you can add those specific users to the actual list. So in my case, let's see, Sean, add myself to this list. There we go. I can update this, and so Sean and Chris here will have user admin level role and license admin level role. Now, the only reason I'm really putting myself into this user group, where to go here, managers user group, is so I can allocate licensing to that group of people. You may also choose to have yourself like an organization admin level role if you really want to. You can manually create that role. That one has like an org admin checkbox on it for anybody who needs to be God level across the entirety of your firm. So those are like the three first groups that I typically create or work with. The everyone group, which automatically exists for everybody and everyone's already in there, no management really needed. A managers level group, like a BIM or CAD manager group, and then I might create myself an organization admin group to make sure that I can have any of my team members in there. The one that I'm focusing on today, though, is this managers one because I'm going to use that in my licensing right now. So now that I have that group created and I have some users in that group, I can go to licensing over here and I can assign a license to it. You saw me in the management here of the BIM Manager Suite. I assigned licenses or already had assigned the license to the CAD BIM managers. Now, in this case, there's a new group in my list. I can simply select that, save my selection, and those users will also now be able to access that BIM Manager Suite licensing. And it's immediate. There's no waiting. Those users are in that group. That group is associated with the Manager Suite, license allocated. In the future, if there's additional people who need access to that, I can simply put them into the user group over here on users and groups. I can simply add an additional user to that, and they will immediately be able to access that licensing. So if I was adding a new user or editing, say, David right here, I can edit David. And by editing this user or by going to groups, I can do this either way, whichever way makes sense. I can go to my select roles and members and add David to the managers group. And by doing that, when I update this, David will be able to get access to that license immediately if he didn't already have access. And because he's a part of the CAD BIM manager group, I mean, of course, he's got the access. So whatever. Now, I mentioned that I was going to show you a way of doing this a little bit more efficiently than doing user creation one by one, hitting the little plus sign and one by one creating users. That's a bit tedious if you have more than like 10 users. 10 users, no big deal. 50, 100, 1,000 users, that's a bit frustrating. So there's a better workflow, and that is I would recommend using the Excel file. You can export a list of users. When you click this button, it will actually send you at your account, whatever you're logged in as here, an email saying, hey, here's your current list of users and groups, and you can do full group and user administration in that Excel file. You can add users to groups. You can add just a whole bunch of new users if you need to out of whatever system you've got. Just paste a bunch of email addresses. It automatically assigns them passwords. You can put them into user groups if you need to through there, save that file, and then simply turn right back around and publish or import that list of users, and it will publish back into the CTC system all of the new users and update any of the existing users that are in that list. So there's a real easy way of doing some of that administration. And there's other ways as well. Those of you who have large firms and you want to automate this further, we can always have conversations about that. I encourage you to get a hold of CTC separately to talk about some of the other workflows there. So now let's talk a little bit about revoking licenses. Like, how can I pull something back if a user is actively using it? Let me give an example. If I open up a View Creator tool here in the BIM project suite, this went and checked to see if I could get a license. And if I can, then it gives me the license and opens up this licensed tool for me. In fact, if I jump back into the portal right now and I go take a look at licensing, and I go down to the BIM project suite, once this refreshes here, it's going to show that that license is in use by me on my computer, and it started on whatever that date happened to be, right? So it tells me all of this information. Now, if I need to, if I'm out of licenses, now I've got 16 and only one in use, so I mean, I'm not out of licenses, obviously, but if I was out of licenses, maybe my BIM Manager suite, I've only got one license or two licenses, and both of them are in use, and I know that one of those people is in a meeting, and they're going to be in that meeting for a while. Maybe I want to revoke that license. Well, all you have to do is hit the little trash can. That's it. Hit the little trash can, it pulls out their license, it forces that license back into the system, and over here, in Revit now, this dialog box stayed open. They didn't lose their progress, but they no longer have a license to the tool at this point. When they get back to their desk, if they finish trying to use this tool, maybe they're trying to create some plan views or whatever, and they start like checking boxes and they want to add a bunch of stuff to the list and they want to create some new views. Good on them. When they click create views and try to do something interesting, it will try to automatically re-pull that license. So if I tell this to do it, it did it automatically. It was completely seamless because a license happened to be available. If a license at the time they tried to do this happened to no longer be available, it would tell them there isn't a license available right now. The dialog would stay open, but they'd have to contact some kind of BIM admin to go back over here to the BIM project suite and get them a license if that was the case, once they needed to get that license repulled. All right. So I told you that I was going to show an extra thing before we get to the thank you slide, but my thank you slide is the next one here. So we're going to come back to this in just a moment. I wanted to show you a little bit about the analytics that are available. And this is just a quick taste. I put together in Microsoft Power BI just a small report. I wanted to see for myself, for my organization, what licensing I had at my fingertips. In my case, you'll see that I have 29 licenses of Hive available. I have the 16 BIM project suites. There's a few other licenses in the mix here, but these are what I actually have available. To the top left up here, I've set this up so I can actually see the top 5 or actually in this case 10, I didn't change my number yet, top 10 tools by usage. And so I can see here, Hive across my firm has 316 hours of use in the past 30 days. I can see that the Project and Family Upgrader was the next most used tool here. I have another one down here that just shows the product as a whole. So in this case, Hive versus BIM Batch Suite versus BIM, Project Suite or whatever, by the suite as a whole, not just by the tool, because this is showing it by tool inside the suite, and this is showing me the suite data. And I can also see who is using those tools. So I can see here that Chris was using, for example, the Hive product here quite a lot. Nice thing here about the whole, Power BI environment or Tableau environment or Domo or whatever your analytics tool of choice is, you can actually have some dynamic updating of other reports and kind of see how that works when you click through. But I can see Chris was using the Hive product here quite a lot. And I can see that it was pretty much the CMS. There's also some other things here about he was using the Project and Family Upgrader tool quite a bit here. Other users on my team, like myself, I use Hive quite frequently as well, and also Project and Family Upgrader, as well as a number of other tools. So, you can really see how these products are being used in your firm. I like this because I can identify products that are really popular, but I can also identify from this list products that are perhaps underused, that should be used more, and maybe I host some lunch and learns with my team. So you don't just get licenses from CTC, you get insights to understand how you can do workflows better, potentially, by seeing what products are in use and what products are not in use. And if they're not in use and they should be, train on them, because maybe people don't know about them. But this just gives you some immediate insights here based on your usage of those products. So with that, I'm going to shut it down now, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the next CTC webinar. We hope you have a fantastic day.